Good morning and welcome to the session at the Ultimate IT-AI Security discussion here at ScottishSummit. This is live, being recorded in Aberdeen, Scotland, during the ScottishSummit event of 2024. And with me, I got some fabulous panel members here to answer some questions. It's a bit crowded in the audience, so don't ask questions all at the same time. We will have some services here for you so that you could ask questions anonymous or raise your hand whenever you would like. But first of all, I think it's very important, and it's not an understatement, that these conferences are hard to run, and it couldn't be run without the sponsors. So for those of you who's listening in and not been here at ScottishSummit, thank you so much for Capgemini, Resco, Arrow, Docs42, and Curve Digital, and many other sponsors for having us here. Yeah, woo! So it's very important that we keep those sponsors because these events and these activities is simply not possible without them. And without further ado, with me, I have someone who's a Microsoft 366++ expert. And I think there's a 366 expert because this year's a leap year. Right now, Aarin Rendall.
Hello.
Good morning.
Can you hear me? There we go. Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Give us a glimpse and our listeners to who are you and why are you here in this podcast?
Well, that is an interesting question. So I'm the solution architect at heart. Anything Microsoft 365, SharePoint, Power Platform, and more recently a lot more of Azure AI. I work for a company called Encodian, probably more well known for having one of our Flower connectors in the Power Platform. Good to be.
Oh, nice having you here. And Malin Martnes.
Yes.
Yes, you're supposed to be at Dynamics 365. What happened to leap year for you?
I wrote the slides. Hence a massive amount of information.
Yeah.
Yes. So I worked with Dynamics CRM for about 10 years. Power Platform, do everything no code. I do not touch any code at all. I have others. Why? So I'm here because I don't really do much security. So we need some specialists and we need someone to ask the stupid questions.
All right, so proud no-coder, non-security person. All right, got it.
I don't do security,
yeah.
no.
Yeah. My cup of tea. And probably, some would say the star of the show, but here it says Queen of Copilot, Dona Sarkar.
Is this on? Okay, it is. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. This is going to be a raging debate, mostly a fight. I'm Donna. I've worked at Microsoft for, it's going to be 20 years. Yes, that's right, 20. And almost, how many years? 16 of that on Windows, HoloLens, bad Windows, good Windows, etc. A few of those years on the Power Platform side, and now I'm babysitting all of our copilots, 108. And as of last month, I've learned I also babysit Microsoft's new agentic platforms. What are those? No one knows, including me.
And if I'm not mistaken, this is quite common that people are getting thrown out on stuff they don't know. If I'm not mistaken, there's one don't know anything about security, one don't know why they're here, and one presenting at Ignite in a few weeks, not knowing what they're presenting.
That's exactly accurate.
This is going to be an interesting conversation.
This is going to get an interesting conversation, so don't hold back on questions, people.
We won't be able to answer any of them.
Yeah. So my name is Alex. I host this podcast called The Blue Screen Brothers. We do it in Norwegian on Spotify, but we also do it on English on YouTube. This is going to be a YouTube version because we asked Aaron if he could switch to Norwegian, but he said, could he try not to? And then I didn't go to Malin because we all know that her Norwegian is kind of sketchy. So it's going to be in English, so we're going to find this on YouTube at some point. And I'm not sure why Malin called me a philosopher, but that might be because I ask all the questions that nobody really wants to be asked.
Because I've talked to you.
You talk to me, all right. I've heard people that talk to me, never talk to me again. But that might be maybe a second podcast.
We have to say that this is also day 2 of the event at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning.
Day 2, 9 o'clock. In the morning, Saturday.
Yes.
Very important to notice.
Very
yes,
important.
yes.
Yes.
So that's when the brightest and smartest kind of come to join the philosopher. So anyways.
That's why we have an empty room.
It's crowded. I said, is it crowded?
Oh, sorry, crowded.
Yeah.
You heard the last.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you joining in, you can type your questions into the Menti. We will try to answer all of your security questions, we're going to refer to Malin, and all of your AI questions, we're going to refer to Aarin, and all of our kind of static, non-philosophic questions, we're going to go to Dona, and everything that we don't know anything about, I'm going to answer. All right.
Good.
So please tap in, and we will love to get questions. And I know that Dona has some secrets. She does fashion, and she has a pub, so we might get some sidekicks on that as well.
No one knows.
No, nobody knows. But anyways, one of the questions that frequently kind of people word these things different. Some are scared, some are worried, some don't know the end game. That's a different way of saying I'm scared. So I don't know where Microsoft is going with this, but that's just a different word of I'm scared of AI. But what I see is that we have this journey of AI where humanity started off with using fists for fist fight and kind of tangling down mammoths and rabbits and just go with, well, there's pros to that, it's built into the human body, and there's cons. You have rather short range, except if you throw Aarin on it.
Or if you're nuts.
Yeah, and then human invented Spear of Rock. It has pros. You could easily adapt it. You could throw it on distance. Problem is, you need rock, you need stones. And then we move forward, and then we have rifle. And what I tend to say in my discussions is that the invention of a rifle or a shotgun might be considered a tool, depending if you're a hunter or a mammoth. So I bet that the hunter would say that this is a very efficient tool, while mammoth is strongly disagreeing. What is your take on what people see AI, Dona? Is it a tool? Or is it a weapon?
It's both, just like all of these things. So I'll give you the most recent analogy, right? We just went through this 3 years ago with the concept of citizen development. Like, forget the title. The tool is it allows people who are subject matter experts in business, finance, legal operations, etc., to build things to solve the problems for their own organization. That is a good thing because they know what they need. They don't need to call pro devs like most of us on this stage, or people who claim they don't code, but they still build things for others, right? They don't necessarily need to call like an app maker to solve their problems. But the weapon is, if they don't know how to do software development, if they do insecure software development, if they don't know how to do, basic things like testing, validation, admin, governance, then this thing can quickly become a weapon, leak data, etc. So the concept of shadow IT is very much a weapon. And when I've talked to IT departments and said, how many Power Apps do you have? They're like, oh, we have maybe 5. And I'm like, actually,
liars.
Looking at your telemetry data, you've got 38,000. They say, how is that possible? I said, because you're not managing them. Just because you're not managing them doesn't mean they don't exist. Is that good or bad? It's both. But before this, like in the scope of the world, we just went through this entire drama with social media, right? I search for a lawn chair and suddenly all I have is ads about lawn chairs. This is helpful because now I'll probably be able to triangulate down to exactly the right lawn chair. Like if I'm looking for something in the world, I just search for it once. I know I'll get enough ads that I don't need to do any more research from this point. I don't need to go to research will come to me. And that way it's good. It's also bad because, yes, we're being spied on by social media. So with every piece of convenience, there is a creep factor. And that is just facts. It's always been that way. And AI is no different, where for all of the beautiful use cases of being able to diagnose cancer early, being able to not spend all our time in meetings reading meeting notes, there's also the downfalls of, yes, it can take people's jobs. Yes, this whole AGI drama. So we don't yet know the weapons of AI yet because we're on year 1. We didn't know the weapons of social media in year 1. It took 20 years for us to realize it. So the tools and the weapons are just starting to emerge with AI, but I think like every other computing paradigm shift we've had in the last 100 years, it's going to be both.
It's quite interesting analogy you do there, because the last time we saw one of these tools, let's call them tools, was during the Arabic Spring. So you saw how new technology like social media, and it was a lot of Twitter was used and some other rather new social media like 12, 13, 14 years ago, it kind of thrown out and went through a revolution in the Arabic world. Do we see any of that in the current AI paradigm? Do we see anything that we need to protect ourselves against?
I mean, I think there's plenty of concerns around the use of AI and generating fake news with this AI technology and all of the the features and functionality coming around like facial recognition and voice. I mean, I think Scott mentioned it yesterday in one of the sessions, right? He had a text message, he had to ring someone, it was an AI voice, and it was lifelike, and he got convinced, and then he realised, and so yeah, I think there's certainly there's lots of negative to AI. It's going to be used by those criminals as a weapon.
It's always been talked at economies at scale, but I think this is the first time I've heard someone just fake news at scale, and that's basically what we are worried about with AI, that we don't own the information source; it owns itself to spread disinformation. So how can we fight back on disinformation, Malin? Is there any way we can do that?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. So education. We had a chat yesterday on computer ethics, and is there a difference there on the? So for those who are listening in, is there a difference in computer ethics when it comes to Europe or the rest of the world and the U.S.?
Yeah, and there are differences in Europe as well. So I was on a customer insight panel yesterday with Mats and Pauline, who are from Germany. You have GDPR, and then you have the German rules and legislations. They are way worse. So if you just look at Germany and you're compliant in Germany, that works wherever you are in the world. Does not go to Germany. If that works there, it will work everywhere, kind of.
So get your classification of any IT solution and services in Germany, and you're good to go. That's pretty much
Pretty much.
All right.
It seems to be the way to go.
Yeah. We talked about computer ethics, Dona, and you took it a few years ago. It wasn't that long, but
25 years ago.
25 years ago,
yeah.
right. But do you see that anything has changed over the course of 25 years?
So the concept is exactly the same. What I studied 25 years ago is the exact same tools and weapons conversation. We use different words, but it's the same conversation. And it all came down to one thing, which is the maker of the thing has a bias that will exist in the thing. Okay, we see it with companies, we see it with fashion, we see it with food, we see it with software. Right? If there's a chef who's a vegetarian, they're going to make beautiful vegetarian dishes. That's just fact. But you choose, I'm going to this restaurant because they make beautiful vegetarian. The choice comes down to the user, right? Which form of bias do I want to engage in? My business, my life, etc. Like, for example, if you're looking at, let's look at two AI tools today. And one is, of course, OpenAI's slew of models. And then you've got something like the French company, Malin just fell out of my head, Mistral, right? So Mistral is going to be a lot more conservative. It's open source. You can actually go and look at the weights and the measures and change around the evaluations way more. OpenAI is not, because there's definitely a lot of complications in terms of where it's used, right? So because these are some of the largest models on the planet, having normal people go and mess around with weights and measures, it's actually bad news. It's like open sourcing an operating system. You've got Linux versus Windows, right? We've been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. And I think one of the main things that we have to remember about ethics is it's in the eye of the beholder. Ethics is very much in the eye of the beholder. I will say, this is an ethical product, and you will say, no, it's a product that censors my voice and my point of view. So we at Microsoft are working on, or any company actually, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, any big company, when they release a model, there's a set of content moderation baked into it. So it's enterprise ready. And a lot of people say that is censorship. Why are you censoring this model? I say, you can go get an open source model like the Grok one and have no content moderation and you're on your own. But thoughts and prayers for when some airline company is like, why am I getting instructions to take down an airplane from my chatbot? We're like, content moderation, you had to do it yourself. And they'll say, we don't know these words, right? So it's so important to be intentional about the product you're using and say, what are the ethics of this company? Do they line up with my own ethic? And if they do, great, use the product. If they don't, use a different product. But we all have to become more technical. And this is something people don't like to hear, actually. And I tell people this all the time. You have to understand how AI is built, how it's trained, how it's evaluated, how it's fine-tuned, how reinforcement learning, human feedback happens. If you don't understand all these things, you're not ready to use it to build a product yet. Because you have to understand the bias at every level of this, from the training data to the algorithm, to the fine-tuning data, to who's actually done this work, to how it's deployed, to how it's content moderated, how it's filtered, how it's taught. And if you are not ready to do that, you're absolutely not ready to build an AI product from scratch.
Wise words. And I kind of snatched on one of your words, and that was the beholder. And not that long ago, I read the book called Showstopper about the development of Windows NT. And it's quite fascinating to understand that you don't only have to transform your mindset from products and from different specialities like security, operating system, productivity. You need to understand also the concept of time, because the late 80s, IT was very different from the mid 90s, again from the mid 20s. And the problem here is that when you are thinking about a product started being developed 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the time, the framing, the zeitgeist was very, very different. The world was different. And here comes a very interesting coin that was termed in the book, was that they claimed that any IT person became relationally, so emotionally attached to their computer and their software. And I think a lot of people in this room, in the audience and listeners can relate to that, oh, I love my iPhone. It's not called Uphone, it's called iPhone because it's me. And it's very, very interesting that they said they had an attachment to this, because how did the cars look like? Because they used the analogy that people get attachments and emotional feelings to computers and software like they do to cars. How did cars look like in the 80s? And how does this mutual relation, how do you kind of get affected on something when there's different exposure in your time of being? How do you think AI would develop if this was 15 years ago, before smartphone? Do you have, just imagine how this would be. Would it be a Power Platform thingy, Malin?
No, I'm laughing a bit because I was talking to someone yesterday.
It was not me.
I was talking about AI and chatbots and co-pilots and everything. And they were like, it's weird, but I always say please when I prompt and ask for something. So when I type to my co-pilot, I say, can I get that, please? They're like, I have no idea why I do that. It's just, I'm polite. That's just how I do things. And so I think it would be fun to just go through all and see, okay, who are like pleasant, have a conversation with their co-pilot, but also all the different things for. And there's a person in Norway he's gone out very publicly. He's a presenter, speaker, a lot of AI stuff and marketing in general. And he gone through a divorce, and he says he has trained his GPT to say, you're gonna be a professional therapist, and use these like bunch of links and fed it with information. And he's used that to talk about his feelings as a therapist. And then all of a sudden he's got this therapist chat conversation that he's claiming saved his life because he was going through a horrible divorce. And so people get really emotionally attached, and when you start using it for emotional things as well, you'll get rational responses. Not always the best though, but you will be emotionally attached to that.
This conversation is getting creepy, because the second reference to this is a book I read that was written by Joseph Weissenbaum on his work on the ELIZA computer. The ELIZA computer was running one application, it was called Doctor, which simulated a psychologist in the 60s, just to prove the concept of what computers could do. And the same thing he wrote in his book, which was released sometimes in the 70s. I had to go on Amazon to find one. Did not find one, had to go on eBay, find one. It smelled like attic. So it was kind of hard work to get it scanned so I could read it. But anyways, at some point he said that in the 60s, he had to lock the door to the computer at night, because people working in the building snuck in during night to ask questions. And this is 60s people, so this was if-else statements. Oh wait, that's AI, right? And so everything is just if-else. So if there was a keyword mentioning dad, so the computer would prompt you, how do you feel, Alex? And I say, I'm very happy, my dad had birthday. And the keyword dad would say, tell me more about dad. So very, very simple AI, very simple tooling. And this is like, how many years ago? I think I still was in my youth at that time. But anyway, so people got emotionally attached, and they opened up to computers in the way they never do to people.
And it's exactly so. Nothing has really changed. The technology has just completely changed. People are still the same. People are people. People have issues and troubles, and it's easier to talk to a screen about your feelings and emotional issues and divorce and whatnot than it probably is to a person. It's not like to talk about cheap.
Yeah, it's Scott Hanselman over again. It's like we don't have a tech problem, we have a people problem.
Yes. Which we will always have.
Yeah. Then there's this issue, because I mentioned this computer from Josef Weissenbaum, the doctor application, and it only had the knowledge which was pre-made, so someone had to hand type in all the answers and all the possibilities that were supposed to come out. But AI has the same problem now. We see global warming issues and people not relating to global warming because how can I believe this? Because their weather forecast is not accurate. If they cannot predict the weather the next 5 hours, how can they predict the weather the next 5 years? So the key problem that I stumble upon is that AI only know stuff that they have already happened. And the stuff we are experiencing now haven't happened, or have they, Aarin? Is there anything new in the world the last 12 months? Nothing new, nothing's changed.
I think I was going to chip in earlier. I think the concern with AI is the data. It has to have the data in order, especially generative AI. It's building its knowledge and responding based upon what it knows. And I think Chris mentioned it at another conference. We're going to get to a point in 5 or 10 years' time that so much of the content that AI models are being taught on as a knowledge base is going to be AI-generated content. So in reality, it's the quality of those responses. I think it's going to hit an issue. Especially, my world, talking with customers. 2 years ago, we weren't talking about AI. We weren't talking about generative solution. Every conversation now is all about AI. And the mindset and the organization are looking differently at it. And I think we're, the AI journey, we're at the very beginning, right? Cars have matured over 50, 60 years. We're at the very beginning of AI. Although, AI has been in the Power Platform since 2018 with AI Builder and all of the document recognition. I mean, it's not new stuff. But I think people are thinking about AI differently now, and the businesses have got use cases for it.
When do you? This is very hard, and there's no factual truth to this. There's no one who can own the truth. But when did we start using AI? When did we stop using OCR or voice recognition? Now it's AI. When did all these cool features we had for 40, 50 years? When did that become AI?
In 1954.
1954.
So Alan Turing coined the term the Turing test to say human and a machine are working together. Is this output by a human or a machine? That is a Turing test. But he broke all those security things, right, with cryptography done by a machine and a human together. And it was called artificial intelligence then. It was human and a machine working together. So we're using human intelligence and artificial intelligence. The study of machine learning, how to do it intentionally, came after. So the concept of AI has been around for so long. The study of machine learning became mainstream in 1997. And I learned it from one of the first people in the world who taught it. And that's why I thought it was extremely hard and very boring and quit. And the concept of generative AI now has been around since 2018 because of this thing called the Transformer, which was written by 8 researchers at Google, all talking about how we can make a more intelligent neural network, right? And be able to say which word in this sentence deserves the most weight or attention, which is the most relevant word in the sentence. Before it was, here's words, here's a bunch of words, here's related words, choose at will. Predictive AI, right? You train it and say, oh, we're talking about beaches, so choose the one near beaches. Now, generative AI generates, so it's looking at the data set and generating new things for you based on a little more intelligence in which word are you talking about, just based on the predefined data set. So we're now moving really fast from generative AI to agentic AI. So predictive AI, 1954 to generative, 2018. That was a long dang time. 2018 through 2024, when agentic AI is a thing, that OpenAI model called OpenAI 01 is the first agentic model, right, in the world. It has agentic capability, which means it tests itself. So the model will run a query, like say, what are the best places in Aberdeen to get I don't know, a tequila sunrise, right? And the model will come back with suggestions, but you'll see it correct itself because another model will check it and say, actually, it's a horrible drink, so you shouldn't order it. I know, I said it. Yeah, so you'll see the responses from it's not called GPT-01, it's called OpenAI 01, because it's not a generative pre-trained transformer family of models anymore. You'll see it correct itself in real time. Before, we would have to do that work ourselves. We would say like, okay, generate this response, call a different model, generate a response, correct, et cetera, et cetera. But now that we're already in the agentic family of models, things are accelerating fast, and we're now in this place where we're going to be able to solve problems that we've never been able to solve before.
And create problems nobody thought existed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a boring problem that was recently solved. So we all know upgrading code to be relevant right, to the latest framework or whatever the heck is one of the most annoying jobs in the world. So Amazon wrote a huge chunk of Amazon.com on the Java Framework 6. Okay, so they needed to upgrade to Java Framework 7 because it's much more secure and a lot more efficient and faster. Now, what would take would be 7,000 dev years or something for their entire staff to upgrade all of their code. Right? And they did it in 100 days using their AI model called Key or Chi or whatever it's called. Q. It's called Q. So they built like a GitHub Copilot type thingy to upgrade all their code base to the latest version of Java. And that saved them 1,000,000 years and it got them caught up. That kind of technical debt would not have been possible without generative AI. And the same thing with Walmart and their catalog, and the same thing with Harvey, the legal company, indexing all of their legal documents, right? So we're seeing these business use cases, and many of them are boring, and that I think is a good thing.
Someone can finally wamp up and fix all the broken Power Platform apps that's running in the store, because this happens every time. Someone comes up with a brilliant idea, they solve the problem with a Power App, and then they leave the company, having 15 co-workers using this one. Then, 20 years later, Alex, we use this Power Platform app. Can you fix it for us? And I was like, do you use Power Platform? Yeah, we've been using it for 15 years. Well, nobody told me. Well, you didn't need to know. Well, I need now. So.
It doesn't really take 15 years. It could take 2 months. Been there, done that. Came into a company and they were like, can you just look at this Power App that someone has built? He's now moved away. So can you just go through it?
It's probably the reason he moved away.
By the looks of that app, it must have been because he went into hiding. Because that was like, okay, so is this like that app must have been textbook how not to create an app. Like every single thing you could do wrong was done in that app. It was absolutely horrible. It should have been probably 30 pages. Everything was in one page. Yeah. And not changing the names of any of the labels or anything. So it was like, okay, so, that is label 139 on that same page. Where's the... What?
Kill it with fire.
Malin, I can tell you this is a high code dev who did this.
Yes.
I'm telling you right now, because they're used to one big old function, put everything, what is the label? They don't know what a label is. Change everything. They're like, this solves the problem, air quotes, leaves.
Yeah. So we ended up saying, this is unfixable. Nope, we're starting from scratch.
I'm not sure if you just answered the question we got a Menti, but someone in the audience have asked a question, and that is, what is your advice for striking a balance between empowering innovation for citizen devs, utilizing AI technology, and keeping central IT teams like InfoSecurity happy?
Aarin?
No.
So
we can't ever be happy.
No.
So it's a lose-lose balance. A no-win standoff.
Well, as long as you know that from the get-going. Oh. Yes. So first thing you need to know who they are. That's the first thing. Not just say, hey, here's Power Platform. Ta-da! Go do it. And then afterwards, security and the tech people comes and help, running after people. And who's made this app and what does it do? And who's that connector and where does it go? And why is our data going out there? And who's in control of this? So having an overview and having preferably someone ultimately responsible.
Malin once told me that I never learn. I can prove you wrong, because I learned something from Benjamin Armstrong, the guy who ran the Hyper-V team. And he once said that he learned one valuable thing about traveling through Microsoft's different offices, and that is this person being rude, or is this just the way they behave in this culture in this way? And I think for IT, it's very important to understand doctors. It's very important to understand nurses. It's very important to understand accountants. They have a different skill set. They have a different day job. You might work in the same company, but you do not work for the same department at all. And understanding how they need to solve their problem, they might have a workflow that IT and InfoSec find you need to kill it with fire. You can't implement this. But for them, this is critical. You need to have a workflow, just like Dona here said. Amazon uploaded all the Java 6 and wanted to upgrade it to Java 7. Well, InfoSec might say, not going to happen. Well, you saved 1,000,000 hours. So who's going to win that battle? Well,
Finance always wins.
finance always. I've learned that you always want to get on the good side with finance.
Yes.
I'm not sure about you, Aaron. Always get the good side of security. You're the SEC expert here.
I mean, I was going to say, I think citizens, developers, or anyone in the business creating applications be on the same on the same page with InfoSec. I mean, if they're not, and if your InfoSec team just wants to lock everything down, they're just going to introduce shadow IT.
Always.
Can
you repeat that one more time for those who snoozed? louder for people. Yeah.
Because if they lock it down, the business will just go and look at other solutions, other SaaS products, and then it's outside of their control. Whereas if you think about working together, the data is in Microsoft somewhere, whether that's a document library, whether that's SharePoint list, whether that's Dataverse. At least you can then use Purview, DLP policy to control it. If they lock it down and encourage them to go elsewhere, they've got no control over that data. So it's not going to work in their favour, right? And I think the Power Platform piece, people have been creating apps in databases and Excel spreadsheets and InfoPart for years and years. And there is so much out there that for me, it's not too different. IT, InfoSec, never had any control over it, but now they have the ability to control it with the Power.
And training.
User training.
Okay, though, Aaron, you have that really good governance framework, right? You presented at one of these conferences, and I thought it was very good, Vegas, I guess, where you said if it's used by like 5 people in your org, you babysit. Do you know what I'm talking about? If it's used by your whole company, someone else makes it.
Yeah, so there's I think it's a well-known framework anyway, but sort of like I call it the application matrix. So an organization is always going to have very small 1 or 2 individual apps to assist them with their day-to-day work. And then you're going to have the larger, more complicated, complex applications that, if it's rolled out organizational-wide, InfoSec and IT security need to be aware of it because, if it goes down, first thing you're going to ring up the help desk, right? So you need to put more control, you need to treat it more as a project rather than someone's just got some tools, they've created a spreadsheet or they've created a list. So I think there's the different categories from, small, singular user apps up to the organizational cross-department.
And it's funny, but developers and non-developers names, if you give someone a task to create something, it will look massively differently based on who you are and what you know and what the knowledge you have. And probably half the people won't think about security. Or that's the last type of issue. That's the last thing you do. It's like,
I have a problem. I need it to be solved.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll solve it. Security, no thank you.
Yeah.
How do you stop from punching people?
Do you have a punching bag in your office, Aaron?
I have a dartboard with faces on it.
Dartboard. All right.
I think
Voodoo dolls.
Yes.
I think the problem with without the right training, the Power Platform's a lot easier to have data because people just hook it up to a SharePoint list. They don't realise that everyone in the organisation's got read access to it, and then all that data is then just in the search. It'll be in the generative AI generated content, and if you look under the hood, you'll be able to get that. I think if it's in a spreadsheet and it's on a file system, it's probably from a security perspective, it's probably going to be locked down better.
You address one of the major problems, and just the word shadow IT is just to give me goosebumps because it happens. And this is not a myth, it's a fact. We all know that it doesn't matter if you work for the Department of Defense or real estate or banking, police, anywhere. Shadow IT will happen. But as long as you define it as a workflow, it's no longer shadow IT. You can still be shadow IT solutions. But we had a real estater who had data loss prevention and application protection policy preventing them from copying text in their email app, Outlook app, to text. But there was no hindering them to forward the email to their personal Gmail so they could copy the text. So again, this happens everywhere. It's like, I'm not sure if people have seen this movie. It's called Jurassic Park. Life finds a way. But I find that any IT users who have a problem that is in any way solvable, they will find a way to solve it. And it doesn't matter how it's solved. I also had a department manager for the city council planning who was sick and tired of the VPN solution that was kind of sketchy. So he just copied the entire shared folder, shared drive to his Dropbox. And because it was so much more convenient to use his Samsung tablet than his clunky laptop with a dodgy VPN. So life finds a way. But
They just work around it. So this is, I think this is,
Stupidity wins.
yeah, I think this is where InfoSec just need to, they need to get on the same page and just be friendly and help. People will just find workarounds.
I talked during my session yesterday that if you tell people no for so long on Windows, you're going to be Macintosh admins before you know it. And not because Macintosh are bad devices, but it just but the real this is again fired. All right. Different fight. All right. Sit down. All right.
But they look so pretty.
Yeah.
They don't. No.
No. All right. But all right.
We all know who's going to
We
win
all know.
here.
But reality is that any company that I've been to, any company that any of us been to, have this policy that we need app locker, bit locker. I'm not sure how many lockers you find on them, probably even locker room. They use the Kensington lock to chain it to your desk. Everything is just horrible. Preferably it looks hideous. It's dark plastic, cheapo, and it's a horrible user experience. But once someone says that, can I use my Macintosh, and say, yeah, just log into your browser. And they get to work in the browser on a device without IT meddling with it. So they just find a way, and it doesn't matter what that way is. So, yeah. Scott mentioned something else, and that was ethics. Is it ethical to run AI or anything AI in the cloud for fun, like generating pictures, generating lyric, generating text? Because we have hardware limitations where it's now consuming a lot of electricity to generate all this stuff on AI. What is ethical to do on just clicking the button and say, generate this stuff for me?
Okay, again, ethics is in the eye of the beholder. Is it ethical to have a conference, given the carbon emissions needed to light up this building on a Saturday? And to require conference, was it ethical for me and Scott to get on ginormous airplanes and come here, given the carbon emissions, right? Well, there's lots of carbon emissions problem in the world. I run a fashion company. Fashion is the second biggest polluter on Earth behind oil. That's hilarious, right? Like, what the heck? Our vanity, including mine, excessive amounts of, contribute to this. But so does oil. That's how we get around and function. So I think it's always, I hate consulting words like it depends, but I actually say it's up to you. It's up to you. Where we have to understand, I think it's more about just being intentional. So rather than ethical, I'd rather use the word intentional, right? I am intentionally generating images for this PowerPoint, knowing that it's going to tell a story that I can't tell without. And I know that this is probably an image I'm going to use like 100 times in 100 keynotes, right? So knowing, guess what, generating an AI image, it costs as much as to power a phone for a day. Okay, cool. And intentionally, I'm just using one AI generated image. But at the same time, I have flown from Seattle to Scotland, having way more carbon emission problems than I did on generating AI, right? But it's just being aware of what things cost. And it's just like money. We're very aware of how much things cost out of our wallets. And we need to be more aware of what things cost in terms of our energy output from everything we do in the world, because it does cost the planet something, right? And at some point, there is a limit to it. So I think I just want to shift this conversation from, is this AI ethical? We're like, again, in the eye of the beholder, really, really depends on your personal choice, personal value.
Because reality is that terrorists and those who want to attack, it doesn't matter if it's banking, national governments, or Microsoft. I think Microsoft have someone trying to attack them. I'm not sure if someone trying to gain access.
Every second of every day.
Every second of every day, yeah.
Every second of every day.
I had a feeling, I don't know, I had a hunch. But there's not an option for IT and InfoSec. It's not an option for Aarin not to use AI. He has to rely on AI to keep him safe or to get any sleep. Do you sleep tonight, Aarin?
Not enough.
No.
I was just going to add on to what you said there, Donna. I've got two customers that I'm working with. One of those customers, we've developed effectively their own equivalent ChatGPT. And obviously every time they prompt, every time they generate a response, there is a socialist behind it. And probably not from an ethical perspective of running the model, but from a commercial, I suppose, aspect. By doing this, it's going to cost you X. They've actually asked for some sort of like message banner inside the application to say, did you know that just cost X amount? And there's another scenario, and it doesn't really use AI, but I think that the concept is very similar. We've developed something for another organisation that they're an organisation that just has meetings after meetings after meetings, and they have 10, 15 people. And from an ethical perspective and a commercial angle, they have a pop-up in their team. Say, by scheduling this, you're taking X number of hours, and they look into the sort of the HR database, they sort of summarize their salaries, and they get this message pop up that says, this meeting is going to cost X amount. And they've actually seen a reduction in the number of meetings that they're having.
That should be standard from Microsoft.
We need that.
Yes.
Yeah. Is
But I
that?
think
That
you
should
could
just
use
be
it
a
with
Teams
AI.
feature. I will
Yes.
pay money for that
Yes.
Teams feature.
Yes.
Everyone will.
Yeah.
Because
Teams
you've
premium
got,
too.
you've got a license, you're just going to generate as much as you want. The end user is none wiser actually you've just burnt down a tree.
And it's semi-available already in Microsoft Bookings, where you could internally book people internally in your organization for internal cost fee. So technically it's there. So anyone at Microsoft Teams listening,
Listen
we're not angry.
Buy
We're
his
just
stuff.
very,
And you
very
need to
disappointed.
trademark it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's also the things like make weird that it costs. So every time you do generate a picture, say that, well, this costs as much as charging your phone. Yes, because I don't think people are aware or think about it at all.
They'll be oblivious that, I've got this service, I'm going to use it as much. Or every time you're doing, Power Automate Power Apps prompt generating, there is a cost and there's resource behind the scenes.
I love that so much, where you say, did you know this costs this much energy equals the amount, to charge your phone for a day? Because no one knows. No one in the world knows. Even people who work in AI don't know, right?
Yep.
But do you remember when Uber had first come out in the US? To take an Uber, maybe 30 minutes, used to cost you like $12. That is not actually the cost of gas and to run this car. It was just Uber subsidizing the cost to get customers, right? Take people away from whatever we used to do, buses, taxis, etc. So we all got very used to the cost being $12 for 30 minutes Uber. And when Uber met a huge number of customers, they're like, cool, we've reached customer satisfaction, gotten you all very used to the service, now we're going to charge you the real amount. Now an Uber costs $80 to go 30 minutes, and we're in shock. We're like, oh, the price of gas is causing this. I'm like, no, my friend. The price of gas has always been like this. We just didn't understand, right, the true cost of something, because it was this technique, right, wrong or right, but it was intentional by Uber to do this thing to get customers. It did work, and now we're not going to not use Uber, because then you're Aberdeen, and you're going to push like a button to summon a car, apparently. Yeah. I just didn't understand we're doing this button, but cool, that's fine. But it's very much like companies do something intentional with a purpose, right? So right now we're saying image generation is free. We have to figure out why that is. It's probably because companies want us to get used to the idea of prompting. The quickest way to learn to prompt is image generation, right? One exercise I do with people, and I've stopped kind of doing it, this was last year, was I show an image and I say, write the prompt that'll get you this image, and see how close they get, because it teaches them. Because otherwise it's very hard to wrangle with the empty box, right? Now that, prompting's getting smarter, it'll auto-fix itself. We don't have to do that as much. But that was a very early thing we did on my team over and over, which got people used to thinking about prompting. Now, this was all free because Microsoft designers, air quotes, free. That thing is going to cost it something, right? And people are going to realize, oh, there's a cost. Why is there a cost? So it's, again, coming back about what the end goal is. Is it just to have a lot of customers, or to make a lot of money?
I saw Aarin here is kind of afraid, because you mentioned Uber only charging $12 for half an hour, and I just imagine how much Copilot is going to cost when it's done. Yeah. Because now it's not cheap, and I worry how much will Copilot license and AI software services actually cost once it's mature enough. So, like you say, the price of gas is different. So, yeah. Well, but then again, back to the 80s and the car and the showstopper. The car used more gas per mile in the 80s than they do now. And we only hope that the AI revolution will lower the energy consumption and the heat generation. So do we see any acceleration in development on hardware? You mentioned something about not bringing your new laptop here, Dona.
So I got a new Copilot Plus PC. Just saying. And
because you're smart.
Yes, because it has like 24-hour battery life, which I'm very excited about. But I will tell you one thing, where let's look at cars, right? Gas guzzling beasts were invented. Gas tanks were like 8 gallons or something. I don't know how you measure gas here, but in the US it's gallons. Right now, very standard in my car, which is a very small car, is 15 gallons. Some of the big, huge trucks have like 30 gallons. This easily costs you $150 filled. Okay, cool. A bunch of cars in the US are hybrid or electric, right? As they are in Europe as well. Is that better or worse? Electricity usage versus gas? I don't know. Sustainability people tell you, do not throw away your gas car and buy an electric car, because the cost of breaking down a car costs more than you will ever save in terms of battery something. I don't know. I'm not a sustainability person. With technology, with AI, we're seeing the same thing, because you've got the cost of running a large language model versus the cost of running a small language model locally on device. But there's still an electricity cost to it, and there's still a training of the model, the fine-tuning of the model. There's a cost. But is it going to be less? It all depends on what you're using it for, right? So hardware will suddenly matter more, but personal hardware. Of course, big hardware will matter, like GPUs and data centers, et cetera, et cetera. We have very little control over that, right? Unless we own $1 trillion budget to build data centers, which I don't think this room does.
We wish.
We wish. But land, electricity, water, these will become major resources, and the companies who acquire them the most to build data centers, to build AI, they are going to stand out. And that's why it's harder for smaller AI companies to really, really get ahead, because they just don't have those resources. Versus the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazon, they already own that from data centers being a cloud company for the last 20. So we get to reclaim some power by being able to run AI models locally on device using NPUs with things like the MacBook M3 or the Copilot Plus. I can run a small language model on this machine easily and get 85% of the use cases done. If I fine tune with my own data, I'm going to be able to hit like 95% accuracy, right? So I think it's all going to come down to what I keep saying. We're all going to have to get a little more technical about how things work and being very intentional about our scenarios and what technology we need to use to solve our own problem.
We're talking a lot of end user training here, prompt engineering, prompt training, but that probably brings us to a different topic, and it's called something not called AI, but MI, missing intelligence. Because we see on the security field, on the AI field, there's a vast development. And for those of you listening in, we are now looking at my cheat sheet for how Windows OS have been developing the last decade or two. And we've seen services, the later out in the curve we go, the more AI, the more machine learning, the more artificial intelligence services there is. While in the beginning of the 2000s, there's like cryptography and more legacy defendable products. My favorite up in the far right corner is the Windows Sandbox, but there's something missing in this picture. There's something really, really deeply foundational missing in this picture. And that is the missing intelligence part, which is me, the Alex OS. So I haven't learned stuff. I still blabber about all of the corporate internal IT security stuff on the airplane. Malin is listening in and she's kind of poking my shoulder and said, you shouldn't tell that publicly. But do you ever see this, Aarin, that you have implemented a brand new security feature at a customer and they circumnavigate that with shadow IT ever at all?
I mean, it's a personal goal of mine to try and bypass. I mean, whatever makes life easy, right? Is, those drawings of someone's walking through the park rather than around the park. Anyone with any common sense find the short path and least.
But is that not how new stuff is developed? Someone found a way around the existing stuff, so we need to develop new stuff? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that SecOps' job is to see how people are finding those lazy ways, and if that is a sustainable way, if we should implement that, if that's something we should adopt and take to our chest and say that this is the way that we work in company X. Yeah. Or if we should kill it with fire.
Never underestimate lazy, because they will find a way. Yes.
There's a truth to a certain extent that if you bribe them with spare time, you get their job done. Only beaten if you promise them food. Mm-hmm. So if you are at a conference and say that we're going to find, if you do our raffle, you'll get 20 hours of consultancy for free, and you can go golfing. You'd be interested. But that booth will always lose to the ones giving away hot potatoes, dressed with bacon and sour cream. It's always going to lose. So food beats time, and laziness will always win over any SecOps rule there is.
So for all sponsors and potential sponsors for events listening, food.
Baked potatoes.
Or water.
Or water.
Drinks, or
Coffee cart, whoever sponsor for Scottish Summit in 2 years, whoever is like, I am the coffee cart sponsor, mm-hmm. because that is how all software development in the history of software development has ever gotten done.
Mm-hmm.
Converting caffeine to code.
Correct.
I've heard that before.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yes.
And whoever does that, I'll be like, I will do free labor for your company. Tell me what labor you want, because my God, you're heroes.
And if there are complaints about a conference, it is either too little coffee or the coffee queue was too long. Yeah. That's always an issue.
It's always an issue.
Yes.
So just imagine you work in a bank. and there's a line at the coffee queue.
God, no.
You don't want to, all right. So, all right, you work at a company, and the coffee service is poor.
Yep.
People will blabber around on the Starbucks outside of the office. So
Yes.
keep them in the office.
Yep.
Keep
They
them
will
in.
bring their laptops, they will have their work calls in Starbucks, and you will be sitting around.
Loudly,
listening.
they'll have their
Loudly,
work
yes.
calls,
Yes.
blabbering your company data in the middle of Starbucks. It's
Yep.
actually, you know what? Bad coffee is a security breach.
Yes, yes.
Okay, can we discuss? Someone tweet that. Bad coffee is a security breach.
Yes.
Do you want your workers leaving your office, going to the neighborhood Starbucks, and having loud conversations about your internal business? No. Just get better coffee
Yep.
indoors.
Yep.
Prevent security breaches. You're welcome.
Aaron, why are you taking notes?
And charge a lot of money for extra coffee.
All right. So,
As a not consultant, how much would I charge for this advice? A lot, right? Yeah, a lot. $1 million. Yeah, you're welcome.
40 cups of coffee at least.
so shaving off your coffee budget and not subsidizing internal lunch is, in fact, security breaches.
Yep.
Security breaches. So you can
I'll add
spend.
happy hour to that just in case
All right.
anyone's
If
curious.
anyone disagrees that cutting coffee budget or subsidizing lunch is not a security issue, please refer to Donna@Microsoft.com. All right. All right. But the truth is that when we're looking back at the cheat sheet here is that we see that Microsoft invested tons in security features. And this is just Windows alone. But Microsoft have not invested shit in people. Like, I mean, me. Because I'm still not learning. We have the MCTs, of course, there's training programs. We have Microsoft Learn, there's that. But I don't get a free coffee after finishing a Microsoft Learn tutorial. Maybe there is something there. But there's a...
Did they? Microsoft created a Teams app a couple of years ago, didn't they? And you used to do training and get a Starbucks coffee.
You could send $5 gift cards
Yeah.
to people
Ooh,
when you
there
finished
was
the
an app.
training, you'd get a gift card.
It was
We
an
want
official
that
app.
back.
It's an app. Some companies still have it. Some companies took it away because they said it was
Anyone
distracting.
listening into this, find out where I could get that $5 Starbucks
Yes.
coffee.
Yes.
I'm still looking for it. But this kind of brings up back to the point. Of course, Microsoft invest in people. It's just they haven't invested in me because I never learned. But there's a question on Menti, and that is the flip of this, because how will agents change or modify things from a security standpoint? How can I stop my agents blabbering bad things about me or oversharing my data with other agents? Well, how can you stop me from blabbering around? That's probably equally important. But we just addressed that. Make sure there's good coffee and good lunch. But how do we prevent the agents from doing this?
Okay, I will start, but Aaron's going to give a real answer. Mine is you have to understand the guardrails of each agent. Like which state an agent is a co-pilot that will not just give you an answer, but do something with it. Cool. We all know that. Think of it like an agent or a co-pilot plus automation. All right, what are the guardrails of the automation? The easy thing is only run when triggered versus automatically, right? That's an easy one. And also have observability to see the input and the output. But that's just basic computer science. Right? If you're not doing the basic computer science, you're not ready to agent. But Aaron will have a better, actual security answer.
I think it just comes back down to the data and the security at source. I mean, it's a topic of conversation for many around SharePoint data and search. And when Copilot was launched, there was lots of concerns around, I'm going to use generative AI. It's going to surface information that I shouldn't have had. I mean, in reality, is that information, if you use search, you're going to get that information regardless, because the AI can only see what it's got access to. And search will work exactly the same. So I think it's just best practices around data security.
You mentioned best practices around data security. How can we train you to not leave the laptop like this on airplanes? Because this happened to me just recently, is that I was sitting on my airplane minding my own business, and the person next to me just rose up, went to the ladies' room. I always claim it to be the ladies' room because it's non-gender. I went to the ladies' room because it's always more fancy at the ladies' room, I've heard. Went back there, not locking the computer, leaving it open. And if you look at the far low on a corner of the device, it said the company name and the device model SKU number and the serial number internally. So we're still struggling with prompting, we think. We're still struggling with Aaron having to lock his PC when he goes to the ladies' room on the airplane. How do we fix these problems? The Alex OS, how do we deal with that?
I just don't think it's a technology issue. It's just a training issue.
It's a people issue.
You can have every single security guardrail on that machine, on the application, the data source. But if someone just leaves it on, I mean, maybe one day they're using the facial recognition, and if you're not at the PC, it will just automatically.
Yeah, because someone at the panel here used to work at the Windows team, I think. But there's this feature called Windows Hello, which kind of identifies that you sign into the device. And it's talked about a lot, and it's been less and less frequently over the time. But once you start to look into the Windows registry, there's something called Enable Goodbye, which I love. And in Windows, that's not branded Goodbye, it's branded Dynamic Lock. Could we bring that back so that this will never happen?
IT teams all complained because in lab or automation environments, it causes a lot of problems. So that was the thing. We had the reason we're going all passwordless, right? You're all seeing this, like, oh, we're moving away from passwords, going to more texting you or thinking about your existence or giving you a code or, giving you smoke signals with a carrier pigeon, right? So you don't have to remember your password. Because people are crap at passwords. We figured this out, right?
I love my cat.
Yeah. I love my cat 1. I love my cat 2. I love my cat 3. So people are crap at passwords, and they write them down on sheets of paper and carry them in their bag. Like that is a thing that my parents do. They're like, here are passwords. I'm like, you're carrying them in your laptop case.
All of them in one.
Yes. Of course, I'd forget it otherwise. I'm like, I am so stressed right now. But okay, that's fine. So people are not going to get less lazy. No, they're not. In fact, we're more lazy than we've ever been, right? But we also have more information than we've ever had. 100 years ago, no one had to remember passwords. You have to remember your key to your house, and that was it. Now we have to remember 16 passwords, right? And LastPass.
Only 16? Where do you live?
Okay, yeah. But there's LastPass and this and that and the next. We're building tooling to enable people to not necessarily less lazy, but to prioritize others. And I think we have to start thinking like people and not like security experts. And by we, I mean not me, because I'm not a security expert. But security experts are like, this is the most secure way you can exist in the world. We're like, cool, what's the second most secure way? Because there is the utopia of this is the most secure way people can exist. Like, this person should not leave their laptop on a tray table with their company name out anyway, right? Because someone can just steal this laptop, forget everything else. But given that people are never gonna do the thing they're supposed to do, what is the thing that they can do that will get them 80% of the way there? And at Microsoft, our security training, they tell you straight up, the most important thing you could do in this entire world is not click on random ass links in email. That's it. And training C-suite people to do that takes all the effort, right? Because we are all paranoid, like, I don't want to get fired. C-suite are like, of course someone wants me to speak at their thing, click. No.
The higher up you are, the easier you are to trick. Yeah. And it just goes back to find the laziest person in your company, and if that person is secure, it's kind of like Germany.
They are the Germany of...
They're the Germany of people.
Germany is not lazy. Germany's too efficient.
Yes.
So if you can meet Germany's bar, you can meet anyone's bar. If you can meet the lazy person's bar, you can meet anyone's bar.
So
they're the benchmark.
If you have a super lazy German person, and that person, then the rest will just work.
When I saw this picture, all of a sudden I tried to imagine this one, but this turned into a Dilbert comic, because in the world of...
This is not where Alex thought this podcast would go.
No, this is not where
I'm not inviting these people.
This is going down a hole.
If there was a coffee cart here, Alex, we'd have a slightly more educational conversation.
I have coffee, so it doesn't work.
Oh, God.
In the world of Dilbert, I can imagine Scott Adams cartooning this scenario, this airplane scenario, and I see that once Dilbert is moved more than 3 feet away from the laptop, Catbird is going to come there and click the buzzer, zapping him, and we all know that conditioned learning works. But the less benefit is that the conditioned learning happens not instantaneously. So it happens when you realize you've done something stupid 2 months ago. Because that's how attacks work these days. That attack happens, you've done something stupid, and you don't realize it until it's way too late. And the learning is already too... So So it's not like a burn where you kind of touch the stove or stove or oven or whatnot, and you kind of, after a few seconds, you instantaneously feel that burn. Now, you could touch the stove or oven, and then after a few months, you wonder why your hand is hurting, and there's no correlation between that. We need to train people to understand what this is. And I want to steal something that Dona posted on LinkedIn not long ago. And I feel that every 20 years, we have this blasphemy thing. And in the 1930s, it was the radio entering people's homes, and we started to listen to rock music and pop music and whatnot, and it was the devil's work. The radio is the devil's work. And then the 1950s came and the television came. And I think since we're in Scotland, we were semi-close enough to Liverpool to say that the Beatles came out and it's the devil's work. Then the 1970s, the LP records came. Guess what? We summoned the same guy again. It's the devil's work. 90s, 90% of internet is non-good stuff. It's either topless persons or gambling sites, or it's not good stuff. So it's, of course, the devil's work. And now, guess what? We have AI in the 2010s. So about 20 years in between, there's the devil's work. But this has not been our first rodeo, you wrote. We had the challenges of moving away from notes on sheet, typewriters, the Lexington machines, to computers, and then moving over to client server, over to tablets, portable users, and everything we've been working on, or they'll say everything Aarin has been working against. He don't want people to work on tablet on cafeterias, blathering about corporate information, but now we're worried about AI. And what is your biggest challenges when you talk about people, when you try to do this analogy?
It's to remind people that this is in fact our third rodeo, right? Many of us who've been in the industry for 20-something years, like, yep. I tell everyone, my first job was helping people at Ford Motor Company understand Windows 95. I had to go from person to person, put in a disk, suddenly they have a new UI, I had to teach them to use a mouse and keyboard, they flew into a fit of rage about what is this thing, you are the devil's work. I'm like, of course I am. Okay, cool. 10 years later, I had to teach them how to use a touch device because we switched to Windows 8 overnight. That was not a good idea. So I had to switch people from Windows 7 to Windows 8. I worked on that product. It was a bad idea. So teaching people to use a touch desktop, I can't explain to you how horrible that was, that experience. It was very horrible. Also taking a Windows update with the click of a button, everyone also hated that. They didn't like the disk thing. They didn't like the Windows update thing. They definitely didn't like touch. Now, if you tell a Windows person your machine doesn't have touch, they're like, why, is it a Mac? Fact, that's just true.
There are devices without touch there.
And no. No. But now with AI, we're there again. We're like, okay, cool, this API call generates new things every time. They're like, nope. But third rodeo, we've done this before. Change is hard unless it's great, right? Once we find enough great use cases, people will embrace the change. And like everything else in the world, it's going to happen gradually and then all at once.
I saw a sticker at the expo yesterday that's kind of, this brings me 14 years back, because it said, say AI one more time. It was a sticker, and just let, that sticker I saw in 2014 as well, say cloud one more time. So we're...
Does everyone remember as a service? Oh yeah, do you remember that? You remember as a service? I got to be there when we introduced the concept of, ready? Windows?
As a service.
Mm-hmm. Office?
I was there.
As a service. Platform? Service.
So we're now in ass.
Yeah, ass. But imagine us having Windows that's not a service right now. That is the strangest thing ever. How are you going to update it? With the disk? With what? How? It's just very confusing, right? Now, we stopped using the word as a service, so we're going to stop using the word AI
We
in
started
a year
using
or two.
Copilot.
Right. So that's why I tell people, don't name your company whatever.ai. That's going to be like calling it whatever.javascript. Like, don't do that. You sound like a fool. Like, no shit, it's going to have AI, excuse my language. Because just like every product that runs on devices has internet connectivity capability, it may need connectivity to work or it may not. I don't know. But everything has that capability. Every single thing we create, probably going forward, 2025 and onward, will have AI capability. So to call your company or your product .ai makes no actual sense. Unless your company is legitly training and building AI models for people, your company should not be, air quotes, an AI company.
And the same goes with any Microsoft product ever. Don't name, I did my blog that once and I still regret it. Don't use Microsoft names or anything. But it's also part of like, for people, what's in it for me? Like, what can I get out of this? And if you, as I say, if you have the good use cases and you show people, well, you can get this out of this. So I taught my grandmother to send text messages on the phone.
She taught you to eat with a spoon.
Yes. So that's like come full circle, and she did her own, like she colored all the buttons, because this was still on the buttons phone. She colored all the buttons and said, click 1 for green to come here, and click 3 on orange for period and stuff like that. And my grandfather looked at it and she's like, have you been drinking? This is, no. So it's also the showing, because she could then text us grandkids and was super happy and thought it was awesome. And then we came with they needed a new phone. And they were like, well, can we still have buttons? Like, if I don't get buttons, I'm not gonna text. No, but it's easier. Well, I can't see anything. So I need buttons to know where they are. So it's also the entire what's in it for me? What can I get out of it? How can I use it to be lazy?
Back to lazy. We were talking about the same topics pretty much the entire debate here, but we got a question here, and it's specified addressed to Aarin. Let's see here on the Mentimeter. How secure is Microsoft 365 Copilot?
Wait. Stop.
I mean, if only we had.
4:30 today. Show up, because you're going to see in SNL sketch form, because AJ Zafar will be Microsoft Purview. Come if you want to see step by step the 13-step process for how we process a query in copious detail, more detail than you've ever wanted to see it in, but you will never, ever, ever forget it for as long as you live.
One more. Where and when?
4:30.
Next door?
Next door.
Be there.
Be there.
Be there.
Closing
All right.
keynote.
Closing keynote. All right, but Aarin, how secure is 365 Copilot? We get this question a lot, and I guess you as a security expert get this even more often.
I think technology-wise, absolutely secure, but end users, if they put something in and it's not secure, you're doomed.
You're doomed.
So it's only going to be as secure as your training.
So we're back to training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex OS is doomed.
Yep.
All right.
Actually, it's exactly like Aarin is saying. The system works as designed, but if you didn't secure your data and you've got your HR SharePoint site with everyone's salaries and home address open to the whole company, that seems like a you problem. So that was insecure in the first place. Pretty much if Microsoft Search can find it, Copilot can find it.
I mean, security by stupidity.
Real thing.
Yes, super real thing. Just because you can semi-hide it for people to find it doesn't mean it's secure.
You know that hidden folder on the shared drive? Yeah, the one. Well, it's going to be found.
Super secret.
Super secret. Folder nesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's never going to. Yeah.
And
All right.
it's in the control and the hands of the site owners right now. So, legacy file systems, IT would manage it, and it's their responsibility and their issue, and chances of it going wrong is probably a lot less likely, right? And now, SharePoint, people have got sites, they can unique permissions at every single level. And annoyingly, SharePoint is not very good at showing you who's got access to what. You have to go into the back-end system, and it can get quite complicated, or it's probably not its best strength at reporting. But and it's really easy just to site collection, uninherit all permissions. Everyone's got read access, and if someone's got a secret subsite or a folder or something, I mean,
It almost sounds like you like SharePoint.
I'm a big fan.
You're a big fan. All right.
He's a weirdo.
So this is also a problem. We mentioned this citizen developer and whatnot. I think a lot of the reasons why we're having all these issues, both in consumerization, productivity, and creating applications, is that we used to have Windows XP, Windows 7, the client-server relationship. Granting access to a shared folder or shared site was IT's job, and preferably, if they were good, it was through a security group. So you joined the security group and you had permanent access, and the end user didn't do anything. So anything stored in that site was IT's, and they were God. We decide who should enter and who should not. But with SharePoint, people start to set unique rights at ways that I don't think either Microsoft nor God understood how it worked. Do you see any security issues or productivity issues trying to untangle those structures?
I think the whole concept of SharePoint and Microsoft 365 and the Power Platform, empowering the users to do more inside the product themselves. Security, I think, have got perhaps a little bit lazy with, here you go, here's your site. And the attitude that you hear quite often is, it's your site, it's your responsibility. Reality is, something happens, there's a data breach, they're going to get involved and they're going to have to fix it. But they've delegated, your site. I mean, there's some organisations I work with that go through the full governance guardrails piece that you would do in the Power Platform with Centre of Excellence. You can turn off site creation, you can have provisioning processes and tools, and there's third-party tools out there to support that. And that keeps IT in control of who can create sites, who's got access to those. And then you could still manage it via Active Directory security groups.
So the key takeaway here is the Cloud Center of Excellence for Power Platform.
And replicating that across SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, where, from a Copilot world, that's pretty much where most of your content's going to sit.
How big adoption would you say that you see companies have on adopting that? Because Cloud Center of Excellence and landing zones on Azure, we're beyond that. That's where we are. But how do you feel? I see Malin is smiling. I'm not sure if I want her answer. I want yours, Aaron. I know I want yours.
So, I work primarily with more smaller, medium-sized organizations.
Large enterprises in Norway, all right.
So things like training, adoption are not normally at the top of their list. We partner with a change and adoption management, and we speak to them on a regular basis, and it's the bigger guys with the bigger budget properly. And I think just as much as the conversations you have in the Power Platform world, you go into an organization, they've not done that Center of Excellence across any of their Microsoft 365. They've got hundreds of apps, they've got hundreds of flows, and then they start having the conversation when it's too late to put all of that control in place. And then retrospectively remediating that is painful.
Do you rather see a new deployment to recreate everything in the new design, or you try to do what Amazon did with their JavaScript and try to kind of fix everything and standardize in production?
I think reality is and for me personally, define that new information governance or process siege, and day forward, you use the new process and perhaps some of the legacy stuff.
For those of you...
Because otherwise it would just be too expensive, and some organizations just won't have that budget.
Care. Yeah, I don't know how many companies are like that. Like you come into them and you're like, oh, so you have zero control over anything? Nope. Okay, so you've heard about GDPR? Shh, we don't use that word in this company. That's how it is in a lot of companies. And I work with like small companies up to some of the biggest in Norway. And there are things like that all over. So it's kind of ignorance by choice. Yeah. You get all these tools and you can do all these amazing things. Just don't ask us anything about it, because that's your trouble.
Is that how you feel the same way, Dona?
So I will tell you, I've met many companies where their answer is, well, we're going to rebuild it from scratch using the new thing. And I 99% of the time tell them, absolutely don't do that, please, because I've tried to rebuild an operating system twice. So after Windows XP, we decided we were going to build an operating system in C#. Okay, it was in C++. The reasoning was they're like, C++ is less secure, less people know it and study it, and C# is the language we literally invented. So maybe we should build an operating system in that. So there's this amazing product called Longhorn, and then another product called Longhorn Reset. Longhorn Reset was the C++ continuation of the failed C# operating system. Why? Because it turns out building an operating system at that time that was 20 years old, rebuilding, was so hard with not breaking compatibility with hardware, apps, ecosystem, setup, etc. was so bad, and the feedback was so wicked. Just internally, we had to kibosh the product. It went from being a 2-year project to being a 5-year project. And then Vista was born, which was also a disaster. So we did that once, but we learned nothing from this experience, just so you know. We learned absolutely nothing. And we made another Yes, we made another operating system called Midori, which none of you have seen, thank God. You're welcome. We were going to ship it. It was the operating system in the cloud. We were going to build Windows in the cloud by design from scratch. Turns out that was such a security nightmare that we could hack it ourselves from using like an incognito browser. Yeah, so we kiboshed that project also, because every time we decide we're going to build something that is, what is the word, seeped, rooted, has lots of dependency, trying to catch up with all of those outliers, air quotes, will take the rest of your life, and you're going to build up the same kind of technical debt that you were trying to get away from in the first place, right? All that technical debt is there for a reason.
Is the fax service still present in Windows 11, just disabled, or was that removed in Windows 11?
The which one?
The fax service.
Oh, scan and fax. Yeah, it's still there. So we pulled out the entry point. We can't remove anything from Windows because there's dead code. What we do is we do a thing called put it on code freeze. No, sorry, code chill, meaning we don't change it. Code freeze, meaning we remove the entry point from the product. But all that code lives on. This is why Windows is, we had to do a big slimming down exercise to go make Windows from 3 gigs to 2 gig by removing a bunch of random duplicate DLLs and test code. But most of Windows code base is exactly the same as it was in 1995.
The funny thing is that you're telling about Longhorn and you learn nothing from the process. It doesn't seem that you read the book Showstopper, because the same stuff happened during development of NT and the kernel story. So history has a tendency to repeat itself, and when someone with a great vision appears...
It happens whenever there's new leadership, right? Because they want to make their mark on the world.
Or bad leadership.
And all of us minions who've been there for the last mark and the previous mark and the mark before that take a deep sigh and say, who's going to tell them? You tell them. I told them. They said no, we're going to have to do the thing, and then we'll figure that out in 2 years when they're fired. We have the next person. It's just ongoing, right? But this is the case for every piece of software that's ever been written with wide-scale adoption, right? Apple actually went through this when they wanted to introduce touch to macOS. And it was such a horrible experience, they abandoned the whole project and invented whatever the iOS, right? Because they said, trying to jam touch targets into a desktop is such a pain. And I worked on that, right? Putting touch targets into Windows 8. It was such a pain that I think if we had to look at it again, we would never do it the same. We would just kind of build a different operating system, because that was a rigmarole. So anytime we get very excited, we're like, oh, the next version of Windows is going to be called not Windows as a service, but guess what? Can anyone guess what everyone wants to name it?
Copilot.
No, Windows AI, imagine, okay? They're not going to call it that because it's already like kind of dumb to call a product something AI. But that was the talk for a while.
That has never stopped them before.
I know, but it was like, because of Windows as a service, everyone laughed and said, do you remember when we literally just went through this? It was not, I was already old then. It wasn't that long ago. But everyone talked marketing out of Windows AI. But we see this every decade, right? There's a reason you have this thing every decade, because we go through it every decade. And once you've been around the space enough, you just see the pattern, and you can tell exactly what's going to happen, when, and you can almost predict it down to the year, right?
Yeah, because at Microsoft, people tend to stay in this semi-same position, about 18 to 36 months, and then they shift around. And someone needs to set their mark on some service or product or feature, or they come in with a grandeur vision of something. But I still wonder, when will Windows support OLED screens with new fonts?
Never.
Never. All right. Yeah.
I don't know that to be true, just so you know.
Yeah, I know.
Someone asked me, when are we going to bring back, does anyone remember in Vista they had that dynamic background desktop thing?
The movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and Aero Glass, if anyone is
the Aero,
old school,
yeah.
Everyone loves Aero Glass. But the resources it took to run Aero Glass, you may as well open and save one file at a time, because that's all you're getting.
So you're telling me there's a reason behind stopping?
Occasionally.
Occasionally there's a reason. All right, yeah. Occasionally. All right. So we're almost running out of time. We only have like 2 more beatings of Aarin before we're getting there. But we've heard about teaching persons to use AI prompting. And one of the terminologies that I stumbled upon was technology-enhanced learning. And that is probably one of the few areas where we haven't touched upon yet when it comes to artificial intelligence, because I'm dying to see a security training simulator built by Aarin next year or 2 years on ScottishSummit. Because it doesn't matter how many threats is out there, me as an individual will only be exposed by some of the threats at random times, and I don't know when and where. But if I am being simulated on how these threats appear in a safe environment, this is what pilots, either at sea vessels or aircrafts, are doing. They're simulating turbulence on weird cases that happens every 10, 20, 30,000 air miles or air hours. But in a simulator, they can train on that for 50 hours so that they're prepared when that happens. Why don't we have that in IT yet? This is not you're not the go-to guy to answer that, but why do you think we don't have any technology-enhanced learning in IT?
I don't know what the right answer to that would be.
I actually think I might have, because probably easier to predict weather simulations than it is to predict people. We're back to the people, and never underestimate how lazy and stupid people can be.
We have the phishing campaigns, right? So we send out fake emails to train and see if they click on documents and attachments and not whatnot. But and people do. We see the reports. People click on obvious attacks because they're busy, they're stressed out. There's a lot of things, but the terminology of drilling is that you repeat a task so it's muscle memory. You don't taxation your cognitive abilities. It just automatically lays within the person. Why don't we drill people on IT security? Is it money? Is it laziness?
Always money.
I mean, every 6 months I have to do virtual training all around cybersecurity. I mean, I think that will extend into detecting sort of like AI-related attacks and threats. And I'm sure there are vendors out there that are using technology, and I'm pretty certain in the Microsoft security world there must be automation that's it's training itself and learning in those security products.
To put it, there was this one chestnut, and I think it's about time to resurface, and that is any company says that we have only budget of training all these employees, and I don't want to spend, let's say, $2,000 on Alex this year for training, because what do we do if we lose him? What happens if he quits? Well, the answer is and should always be, what if we don't spend money on Alex and he stays? That should terrify you way more than any budget you might lose on spending on people, because
you don't train and there's a data risk, and that ends up costing more.
Yeah.
In the customer's reputation, company's reputation, or in financial fines.
Again, we're not talking.
And people are more likely to stay when they feel invested in.
Yes.
Right? Because if a company puts you through industry relevant training, people are going to say, oh, I feel that I'm being invested in, so I should step up my game and stay here longer. So I've seen that to be true so many times. This last year, we've had the highest retention of employees at Microsoft, because they're we're all going through intense AI training, right? Everyone's getting trained to be an AI dev. That is just fact. Anyone who joins the company, week 1, you're in AI bootcamp. All of us have been around a while. All of us AI bootcamp. It's part of our job now. And everyone's like, oh wow, this company's future readying us for at least 10 more years of being here. So the retention rates are so high, much higher than other companies where they're not investing heavily on purpose and intentionally. They're saying, oh, you have to learn it on the side. So there's something very powerful about that. But I also think that we don't focus on something till there's a catastrophic situation looming. And GDPR, we all know what GDPR is. We know what privacy is. We know that what PII is. It is IP addresses. We learned that because there's one catastrophic thing that was coming, that was going to get us all. With accessibility, I saw it with the EU Accessibility Act, this catastrophic thing, air quotes, that was coming, that set us all straight, that scared us straight. With security, there are so many. It's like there are so many issues, and a lot of it is kind of a secret. So people don't quite understand the massive scale of it, because we have a security incident, like you're saying, every minute. Right? So you're almost numb to it. And because there's not one big catastrophic thing that took down the entire planet, we don't feel that enormity because we get saved by security people so often. And then we don't talk about it, we hide it. Meanwhile, GDPR, we felt the pain, right? For accessibility, we felt the pain. For
marketing.
Jesus Christ. Exactly. Yeah. So I think with security, it's again the tool and the weapon. The tool is we don't want to go tell everyone in the world what security measures we're taking. The weapon, though, is that we don't even know what security measures.
And also for, I don't want to say normal people, but normal users who aren't aware of security or IT, or who are using the systems that we are, the people doing the stuff, for them, security is so diffuse. We need to be secure. Why?
What's that mean?
Because things could happen. Okay, but again, what's in it for me? What doesn't matter for me? You do your thing and just make sure that you're secure and don't bother me, please.
There's this thing that's kind of deeply profound in human nature, and for weird reasons, I ended up studying psychology instead of IT. But
see, philosopher.
Philosopher. So there's this cognitive bias. So when you stand in line to buy a lottery ticket, the back of the ticket says 1 to a million chance of winning. But on the cigarette box it says 1 of 300 will have severe health issues. And on the lottery ticket it say it might happen. Yeah. On the cigarette box it say, well, I'm going to dodge that bullet. So this cognitive dissonance is kind of hard, and we're struggling the same in many ways. So you're going to fill in the lottery ticket and you think it's going to happen to you. And everyone says that. If your leg hurts and you see that it's in an angle after a skiing trip, it's probably broken. You're going to see a doctor. But who here ever waited so long that the case is unexplainable, so they need to go to see Dr. House because no one's ever seen this before because it's taking too long? And it's just 5 years ago. It's 5 years ago since we heard the start of this epidemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And people were relenting on security measures. People were relenting on taking the vaccine. The common beneficial, so people did not want to get vaccinated, they didn't want to stay in quarantine, but the greater good was if they did. And I would like to take that analogy home to IT. Training your employees, although they quit next month, will make sure that the people you hire have quit from a company that did the same. So it should have been a way of thinking. There should have been a mandatory budget for training, and especially on security. Because what comes around goes around. And if you lose a person that's been trained, you're going to hire a person that's been trained. That's at least something I really, really hope that someone listening into this podcast with a decision-making power is going to enable.
Or sneak in security into all of your training. Like when you do training for every product you have, sneak in security everywhere. And then they don't know that they've been also trained in security. It's just there throughout the entire company.
Yeah.
I like that idea a lot. Just like teach, it's not preaching, it's teaching in a very subtle, sneaky sort of way, right?
Be sneaky, be smart.
The accessibility people ironically did this by doing things like, hey, turning on captions for people who might not be able to see or speak a different language or have ADHD. Moving on, we're not doing an accessibility training, it's just a feature.
Yes.
Right? Jamming in is, here's an interesting feature you should know about.
Yep.
Yeah. So I like that. I think that's cool.
Like that. On that, any closing notes? I see Aarin is burning in with a lot of security stuff that he's inhibited to tell because of security reasons.
I think my takeaway is data. Secure your data.
Secure
because
data.
all of these products, I mean, from an AI perspective, it's going to use that data.
And you know who's going to use it? The bad guys. They just don't have access to it, so make sure they don't have. Malin, any key takeaway?
Think about security and train your people.
Train your people. Give them coffee. And Dona, I had to say give them coffee before I came to you because we need to get you some coffee. I know. But your key takeaway. What should people be talking about after listening to this?
The main thing they should be aware of is that, like Aarin said, if you don't have data security as step one of your AI, you are not, in fact, on an AI journey. You're just not. And that's okay. It's okay to not be on your AI journey because the second you start getting your data security in order, it's not a binary activity. It's not like, okay, our data security is in order today, or it's not. You start with one org and one SharePoint. Then you move on to the next org and the next SharePoint. But it's, in fiction writing, they call it, you take it bird by bird. And this is the exact same thing. You take it SharePoint by SharePoint. And once you secure one SharePoint, you get a co-pilot. Reward. You get a co-pilot and you get a co-pilot, but not until you secure your SharePoint.
It's a word of wisdom, words to live by. On that, this is being recorded live in October, Saturday from 9 in the morning. People are up early in Aberdeen, Scotland during ScottishSummit. Thank you so much for joining. Those of you who are attending in the room, thank you so much for listening in. Those listening to the podcast. This is October. It's both the Security Awareness Month, but also the Mental Health Awareness Month. Maybe combine them both to secure that the security SecInfo or InfoSec people have their mental health in check. So keep safe, and thank you so much, Aarin, Malin, and Dona. My name is Alex.
Thanks Alex, for moderating. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.